Hi, welcome to historic Sandusky House. My name is Maya Taylor and I'm going to be your tour guide today. Let's take a little adventure inside. This is the first entry point for when we give tours, and this has personally not happened to me, but a lot of my other coworkers have experienced this. They come in to do a tour and you walk in and this is your first sight, is this gorgeous staircase, and people look up immediately because you have the beautiful clock there. And we've had at least 4 people that have worked here say that they have sometimes seen George Hunter's wife or his daughter standing in the stairwell right over the ledge right there, just watching. Sometimes she'll give kind of like a wave and then she'll go up the rest of the stairs and disappear. Sometimes she just stares. It kind of depends on how she's feeling that day. So when I had the box thrown at me, I came over and I set the box right here, and I walked over here, and I was standing about right here facing my coworker, and that's when the box flew off and landed right at my feet. And my first ghost encounter was my second year of working. I was working in the archaeology lab, and previously that day, Greg had told me that the archaeology lab in the house had been haunted and told me a few stories about what had happened to other workers. And I didn't really believe at first. And then I began working in the lab, which is in this house, and I started to have various encounters with some of the ghosts on the property. The first one that I experienced was kind of the smell of tobacco smoke. It has a very prominent smell. It's usually almost like a sweet smell. And Greg had told me that other people have experienced smelling that in the house, and nobody else was on the property, so I was kind of weary of that, and I just chose to ignore it. And then about 20 minutes later, I started to hear some footsteps, and I was confused at first because it sounded like it was coming from the roof above me, but nobody was around. And I remembered that Greg told me that the Union actually surrendered on the roof of this house, the historic Sandusky House. So I'm pretty sure I heard soldier footsteps roaming around on the roof. It sounded like very heavy combat boot type of sound to it. And then I chose to ignore it again. And about 20 more minutes went by. And I just have my AirPods in, trying to drown out what is happening because I'm starting to get freaked out. And that's when the whole left side of my body began to get chills. And where I was sitting in the lab, to my left, there is kind of like a security box, and it's also where the light switches are. And the whole left side of me started to get chills, so I look over and I see a shadow, a dark shadow. It looked kind of like a male's body, and it was standing in the door frame, and it had like a hand reaching out towards the security system and the light switches. And as soon as I look over and I see this, all of the power to the house went out. I freak out. I decide to run to the door, and when I run to the door to try to open it, it's a very light door, keep in mind. I could not open it for 5 minutes. I was using all of my might, every bit of strength I could to try to open that door, and I could not open it. It felt like a 220-pound man was sitting there with his hands pressed against the door, holding it shut. And that was my first day working in the archaeology lab here at the Sandusky House. We also do a Halloween ghost story type of stuff. And one night I was giving a tour, and it was the last tour of the night. And I knew one of the people on the tour, and I decided to let them take some pictures and have some fun because it was her birthday. And when we were leaving the building, and I had just locked up, I looked back at the window that we were just standing in, acting like funny and taking pictures as if we were ghosts. I looked back at the window and I saw a whole full body emanation of a woman standing, like how we were standing with her hand around one of the curtains, slightly opening it to watch us all walk away. I've had like a lot of emanations that I've seen or felt their presence on the property, and usually they're kind of like a very light source almost. Like if I see them, it's like gray or white figures, or if I'm around them, I don't feel threatened in any way. I know that I'm safe. It just is more like a light and fluffy type of feeling that I have instead of being fearful. And then if I have the dark figure that's around me, because it's been around me twice, I feel very like chill bumps and almost scared. I feel kind of like I need to run away and get away from that. So it's a very big difference between who is in the house with me at the moment. Now we're going to go into the formal parlor. This was actually the base for the Union during the Battle of Lynchburg, which was part of the Civil War. They had a huge circle table, and they would sit here, do reconnaissance, and just make a plan.
Our scouts report their main force is positioned here, along the ridge.
Then we should focus our attack on their flank.
This was kind of a formal room. Of course, they would do entertaining and stuff for nice politicians and famous people, but people also lived a very structured life in these types of houses. You gave birth in these houses. You got sick and you died in these houses. There was no nursing home or anything like that to go to. So when people died, rather than having a cemetery formal kind of ceremony, you would have your visitations and your funerals in your house. So this was their funeral room. They would put a table along this little area right here. They always did it in front of the fireplace, and the body would be laid out here for a few days, and people would come and visit and give their respects to the family for probably 2 to 3 days, or whenever the body started to decompose and start to smell. So this was kind of what this room was mainly used for.